He was everything to me since his parents died in that plane crash when he was only 9 years old. I raised him alone, my grandson Marcus, working overtime at the Boeing factory to afford the best schools, staying up late helping with science projects, cheering at every robotics competition. I was filled with such overwhelming pride when he graduated from University of Washington with a computer science degree and started his own AI software company in Seattle. Marcus was brilliant. By the time he was 28, his company had developed a machine learning platform that helped small businesses automate their customer service. He had offices in Seattle and San Francisco, 47 employees, and contracts with companies across the West Coast. The boy I'd raised on my machinist salary had built something worth $23 million. Then he met Victoria. She was beautiful, sophisticated, everything a young tech entrepreneur might dream about. She worked in venture capital, or so she said. She wore designer clothes, drove a Tesla, and seemed to know everyone who mattered in the Seattle tech scene. Marcus was completely smitten. Within 6 months, they were engaged. I had my doubts from the beginning. Something about the way Victoria looked at Marcus's success with hunger in her eyes rather than pride. The way she talked about our future, but always in terms of what they would buy, where they would vacation, what kind of house they would own. But Marcus was in love, and I was just his grandfather. What did I know about the modern dating world? Then Marcus discovered the truth. Victoria wasn't a venture capitalist. She was a con artist who targeted successful young entrepreneurs in the tech industry. She had been married twice before, both times to wealthy men, both times walking away with substantial settlements after brief marriages. Marcus found the divorce records, the real estate transactions, the pattern. When he confronted her, she didn't even deny it. She just laughed and said he should be grateful she'd even considered him worthy of her attention. Marcus broke off the engagement immediately. That was 10 years ago. Victoria disappeared from Seattle, and Marcus threw himself into his work with renewed focus. He never talked about her, but I knew the betrayal had cut deep. Marcus rebuilt his life. He grew his company, became more selective about who he trusted, and found genuine happiness in his work and the team he'd built. He started dating again, cautiously at first, and eventually met Lauren, a marine biologist who knew nothing about the tech world and didn't care about his money. They were planning their wedding when it happened. It was a Tuesday morning in March, just after dawn. Marcus was driving to an early meeting with investors in Bellevue. A drunk driver ran a red light on 405. The impact killed Marcus instantly. I got the call at 6:43 in the morning. The Washington State Patrol officer's voice was gentle but firm. "Your grandson was in an accident. I'm so sorry. You need to come to Harborview Medical Center." I remember dropping the phone, my legs giving out, the kitchen floor cold against my knees. At the hospital, they let me see him one last time. My brilliant, kind, hard-working grandson, who I'd raised from a frightened 9-year-old into a man who changed people's lives with his technology, gone at 38 years old. The funeral was scheduled for the following Saturday at St. James Cathedral in Seattle. Marcus had been raised Catholic, even though he wasn't particularly religious as an adult. It felt right to honor that part of his childhood. I spent the week in a fog, making arrangements, notifying his employees, trying to comfort Lauren, who was devastated. The funeral was packed. Marcus's employees, his clients, his friends from college, people whose businesses he'd helped, Lauren's family, even some of his old professors came. I stood at the front of the cathedral, looking at his photographs surrounded by white lilies, and thought about how proud his parents would have been of the man he'd become. Then, during the reception at our house afterwards, I saw her. Victoria stood in my living room, wearing an elegant black dress and holding a glass of wine as if she belonged there. She looked exactly the same as she had 10 years ago, maybe a few more lines around her eyes, but still beautiful, still polished, still radiating that confidence that had initially attracted Marcus. I walked over to her slowly, my heart pounding with a rage I hadn't felt in decades. "What are you doing here, Victoria?" She turned to me with a sad smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Robert, I'm so sorry for your loss. Marcus and I may have had our differences, but I cared about him. I wanted to pay my respects. Get out of my house. Her smile faded. I understand you're grieving, but I have every right to be here. Marcus was my fiancé. We were going to build a life together before he made some very poor decisions. Poor decisions? He discovered you were a con artist who targets successful men. He did the smartest thing he could have done by ending things with you. Victoria set down her wineglass carefully. That's not how I remember it. And that's actually why I needed to speak with you. I've consulted with my attorney, and as Marcus's former fiancé, I have certain legal rights to his estate. We were together for nearly 2 years, and I invested significant emotional time and resources into our relationship. Washington is a community property state, and you weren't married. You have no rights to anything. Not yet married, she corrected. But we were engaged, living together, and I can demonstrate that I made significant contributions to his business during our relationship. I provided connections, networking opportunities, introductions to key investors. Without me, Marcus wouldn't have achieved the success he did. I stared at her in disbelief. You're doing this at his funeral? You couldn't even wait until we buried him? I'm simply trying to protect what should rightfully be mine. Marcus's estate is worth approximately $23 million. I'm not being unreasonable. I'm only asking for half. The conversation in the room had stopped. Marcus's employees were staring at us. Lauren had gone pale, her hand over her mouth. You need to leave right now, I said quietly. Before I have you thrown out. Victoria reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. This is my attorney's information. Have your lawyer contact him. We can settle this quietly, or we can go to court, but either way, Robert, I'm getting what I'm owed. Marcus knew what he was doing when he built that company. He knew I was an integral part of his success, and now it's time to acknowledge that. She placed the card on the table next to Marcus's memorial photo and walked out. I stood there, shaking with anger and disbelief, as the door closed behind her. Lauren came over and put her hand on my arm. Robert, she can't actually do that, can she? I don't know, I said honestly, but I'm going to find out. The next morning, I called Sarah Mitchell, Marcus's corporate attorney. Sarah had helped him structure his business, handle his contracts, and navigate various legal issues over the years. She was sharp, methodical, and had known Marcus well. Robert, I'm so sorry about Marcus, she said when I reached her. He was one of the best clients I've ever had. Smart, ethical, always thinking ahead. Thank you, Sarah. I need your help with something. Victoria showed up at the funeral yesterday. There was a long pause. Victoria Rousseau? The ex-fiancée? Yes. She says she has legal rights to Marcus's estate. She wants half of everything. Sarah swore under her breath. She has no legal standing. They weren't married, they didn't have children together, and Washington state law doesn't recognize palimony claims. But that doesn't mean she won't try. Let me ask you something. Did Marcus update his will after they broke up? I don't know. I assume so? Let me check. Marcus was thorough about these things, but I need to pull his files. She called me back 3 hours later. Good news and bad news. The good news is Marcus updated his will 8 years ago, after the breakup. Everything goes to you, with provisions for Lauren if they had gotten married. Victoria isn't mentioned anywhere. What's the bad news? The bad news is that she can still file a lawsuit claiming she's owed compensation for contributions to his business. It's called quantum merit, basically, claiming she provided services that enriched him and she deserves payment. She won't win, but she can drag this out for years, rack up legal fees, and freeze his assets while the case is pending. So what do I do? First, we wait for her attorney to file something official. Then we fight it. But Robert, you need to prepare yourself for a long battle. People like Victoria are professional litigants. They know how to work the system. The letter came 2 weeks later. Victoria's attorney was demanding $11 million, claiming she had provided essential business development services, strategic networking, and emotional support that directly contributed to the growth and success of Marcus Chen's AI software company. They gave me 30 days to respond. I called Sarah immediately. $11 million? For what? Showing up at parties and pretending to be important? They're trying to intimidate you into settling. They probably expect you'll offer 2 or 3 million just to make them go away. Don't. I won't. But Sarah, what ammunition do we have? What can we use to fight this? We need to prove she didn't contribute anything of value to his business. We need to show that Marcus succeeded in spite of her, not because of her. Do you know if Marcus kept any records from that time? Emails, texts, financial documents? I can look through his things. He had a home office that Lauren and I haven't touched yet. Do that. And Robert, if you find anything that shows Victoria's real character, anything that proves she was targeting him for his money, that will help our case significantly. That afternoon, I drove to Marcus's house in Queen Anne. It was a beautiful craftsman-style home with a view of Elliott Bay, the kind of house he'd dreamed of owning since he was a teenager. Lauren met me at the door, her eyes red from crying. "His office is upstairs," she said. "I haven't been able to go in there yet. Everything is exactly how he left it." The office was pure Marcus. 3 monitors on a standing desk, whiteboards covered with diagrams and code, shelves full of programming books and business texts. A framed photo of his parents on the credenza, a smaller photo of the 2 of us at his college graduation. I sat down at his desk and started going through his files. Marcus was meticulous about organization. He had folders for every year of his business, sorted by quarter, with subfolders for emails, contracts, and financial records. I found the folder labeled Victoria, Personal, buried in his archives. Inside were hundreds of emails spanning their 2-year relationship. I started reading, feeling like I was invading Marcus's privacy, but knowing I had no choice. What I found made my blood run cold. Marcus hadn't just discovered Victoria was a con artist. He documented everything. There were email exchanges where Victoria claimed to have connections with investors who turned out not to exist. Screenshots of her LinkedIn profile showing false credentials. Bank records showing she'd convinced Marcus to loan her $50,000 for an investment opportunity that turned out to be non-existent. But the most damaging evidence was a folder labeled Private Investigation, F, March 2015. Marcus had hired a private investigator right before he broke up with Victoria. The report was thorough and devastating. Victoria's real name was Victoria Patterson. She'd been born in Tacoma, not Paris, as she claimed. She had a criminal record for fraud in Oregon under a different name. The investigator had tracked down her 2 ex-husbands. The first one, a Portland real estate developer, had paid her $200,000 to go away quietly. The second one, a Silicon Valley venture capitalist, had paid her $400,000 after she threatened to claim he'd stolen her business ideas. There were photos of Victoria with other men, taken after she and Marcus had broken up. Young entrepreneurs in Seattle, San Francisco, Austin. The investigator's notes suggested she was running the same scheme on multiple targets simultaneously. But the most important document was at the bottom of the folder. A video file dated March 10th, 2 weeks before Marcus officially ended their engagement. I plugged in Marcus's external hard drive and found the video. It was recorded on Marcus's phone, hidden in his jacket pocket based on the angle. Victoria's voice was clear. "Marcus, honey, I've been thinking. Once we're married, we should really restructure your company. Put my name on some of the accounts. Make me a co-owner. It just makes sense for tax purposes. And if anything ever happened to you, I'd be protected." Marcus's voice, carefully neutral. "We can talk about that after the wedding." "Why wait? You trust me, don't you? We're going to be married anyway. What's the difference if we do it now or in 6 months?" "Victoria, I'm not comfortable putting your name on my business accounts right now." Her voice changed, became harder. "Not comfortable? After everything I've done for you? All the introductions I've made? All the parties I've gotten you into? All the connections I've provided? You'd be nobody without me, Marcus. Nobody. And you're going to disrespect me like this?" "I'm not disrespecting you. I'm just saying, you're saying you don't trust me. After 2 years together, you don't trust me. Maybe we need to reconsider this whole engagement. Maybe we do." The video ended there. I sat in Marcus's chair, staring at the screen, feeling a mixture of grief and rage. My grandson had known exactly what Victoria was. He'd documented it, investigated it, and protected himself from it. And now she had the audacity to show up at his funeral and demand millions. I copied everything onto a new drive and called Sarah. I found something, I told her. Marcus documented everything. He hired a private investigator. There's video of her trying to manipulate him into putting her name on his business accounts. It's all here. Robert, that's exactly what we need. Can you bring it to my office tomorrow? We need to go through every document, organize it, and prepare for trial. Trial? You think it will go that far? With evidence like this? Victoria's attorney will probably try to settle once they see what we have. But if they don't, we're going to court, and we're going to destroy her. The next 6 months were a blur of legal proceedings. Victoria's attorney filed the lawsuit officially, demanding $11 million in quantum meruit damages. We filed our response, denying all claims and filing a countersuit for the $50,000 she'd borrowed from Marcus and never repaid. During discovery, Victoria's attorney tried to suppress the private investigator's report, claiming it was obtained illegally. The judge reviewed it in chambers and ruled it was admissible. Victoria tried to claim the video was doctored. Our forensic expert testified it was authentic and unaltered. As we dug deeper, we found more victims. The investigator's report had included names of other men Victoria had targeted. Sarah reached out to them. Some refused to talk, embarrassed by what had happened, but 3 of them agreed to testify. Jason Murphy, a game developer in Austin, had paid Victoria $150,000 after she threatened to accuse him of assault. He had text messages proving she'd extorted him. David Reeves, a biotech entrepreneur in San Diego, had lost $200,000 investing in an opportunity Victoria had recommended. The investment company turned out to be fake, and Victoria had pocketed a 20% commission. Michael Torres, an architect in Portland, had discovered Victoria was engaged to him and another man simultaneously. He'd hired a private investigator of his own and had photos proving she was running multiple long-term cons at the same time. Sarah contacted the prosecutors. With this much evidence of a pattern, Victoria was looking at potential criminal charges for fraud, extortion, and identity theft across multiple states. Victoria's attorneys sent increasingly desperate settlement offers. First, they dropped the demand to $5 million, then $2 million, then $500,000. We rejected every offer. She needs to face consequences, I told Sarah. Not just pay her way out of this. The trial was scheduled for last October. I'd spent the summer preparing, going over documents with Sarah, meeting with the other victims, steeling myself for the confrontation. Lauren had agreed to testify about Victoria's behavior at the funeral. Marcus's employees were ready to testify that Victoria had never contributed anything meaningful to the company's success. The first day of trial, I walked into the King County Courthouse and saw Victoria sitting at the defendant's table. She looked smaller somehow, less confident. Her attorney was a young man who looked overwhelmed by the evidence stacked against his client. Our attorney, Sarah, stood up to deliver her opening statement. Your Honor, members of the jury, this case is about greed, disguised as justice. The defendant, Victoria Patterson, has spent the last 15 years targeting successful young entrepreneurs, extracting money from them through manipulation, lies, and legal intimidation. She did this to Marcus Chen, a brilliant young man who built a successful business through his own hard work and intelligence. When he discovered her fraud and ended their relationship, she disappeared. And then, when Marcus died in a tragic accident, she saw one final opportunity to profit from his success. She showed up at his funeral and demanded $11 million for contributions she never made. But Marcus Chen was smarter than she realized. He documented everything. And today, we're going to show you exactly who Victoria Patterson really is. The trial lasted 8 days. We presented Marcus's emails, showing Victoria's constant requests for money, her false claims about investor connections, her attempts to manipulate him into giving her control over his business. The private investigator testified about her criminal history, her pattern of targeting wealthy men, her use of false identities. The other victims testified. Jason Murphy broke down on the stand as he described how Victoria had threatened to destroy his reputation unless he paid her. David Reeves explained how he'd lost his life savings to her fake investment scheme. Michael Torres showed the photos of Victoria engaged to multiple men at the same time. Lauren testified about Victoria's behavior at the funeral, her cold calculation, her complete lack of genuine grief. Marcus's business partner testified that Victoria had never attended a single board meeting, never contributed to product development, never brought in a single legitimate investor connection. The forensic accountant testified that during the 2 years Marcus and Victoria dated, his company's growth rate was actually lower than before and after that period. If anything, the relationship had been a distraction that slowed Marcus's success. When it came time for Victoria to testify, she fell apart on the stand. She couldn't explain the discrepancies in her story. She couldn't provide evidence of any actual contribution she'd made to Marcus's business. When Sarah played the video of Victoria trying to manipulate Marcus into putting her name on his accounts, several jurors shook their heads in disgust. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. They found in our favor on every count, awarding us the $50,000 Victoria owed Marcus, plus legal fees. But more importantly, they recommended the case be referred to criminal prosecutors. 3 months later, Victoria was indicted on 15 counts of fraud, extortion, and identity theft across Washington, Oregon, and California. The evidence from our civil trial became the foundation of the criminal case. The trial was held this past winter in Seattle. I attended every day, sitting in the gallery with Jason, David, and Michael. We'd become friends through this ordeal, bonded by our shared experience of being targeted by the same predator. The evidence was overwhelming. Victoria's pattern was clear. She'd stolen over $2 million from at least 9 different victims over 15 years. She'd filed false police reports, created fake investment companies, forged documents, and ruined reputations. When the judge read the verdict, guilty on all counts, I felt something inside me release. A tension I'd been carrying since that day she walked into my home during Marcus's funeral reception. Victoria was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole, for 12 years. The judge's words were harsh. Miss Patterson, you have spent your adult life preying on vulnerable people during significant life moments. You have shown no remorse, no accountability, and no recognition of the harm you've caused. This sentence reflects the severity of your crimes and the need to protect society from your predatory behavior. Victoria was also ordered to pay full restitution to all victims, approximately $2.3 million. Since she had no assets, everything had been spent or hidden. Her wages in prison would be garnished indefinitely. Even after she was released, she would spend the rest of her life paying back what she'd stolen. But the most important part of the verdict came in the judge's final statement. The evidence in this case shows that one victim, Marcus Chen, was uniquely prepared for your predation. Mr. Chen documented everything, investigated you thoroughly, and ensured that even after his tragic death, the truth would be known. It is largely because of his foresight and preparation that we were able to identify the full scope of your crimes. In a very real sense, Mr. Chen prevented you from victimizing many more people. After the sentencing, Sarah, Lauren, and I met in Sarah's office to discuss what to do with Marcus's estate. The legal fees had been substantial, but there was still $19 million left. Marcus updated his will a year before he died, Sarah explained. He left specific instructions. The bulk of his estate was to be used to establish a foundation that provides scholarships to first-generation college students studying computer science and engineering. He particularly wanted to help kids from working-class families, like his grandfather had been. I looked at the document Marcus had signed, his familiar handwriting on the margins with notes about his vision. He wanted to help kids who had potential, but no resources. Kids like he had been, raised by a grandfather who worked at a factory but dreamed of giving his grandson opportunities. "There's more," Sarah said. "Marcus left a letter for you. It was sealed, to be opened only if he died before you. He gave it to me 5 years ago." She handed me an envelope with my name written in Marcus's neat printing. I opened it with shaking hands. "Grandpa, if you're reading this, something has happened to me. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I live to be 100 and we spend decades annoying each other over Thanksgiving dinners. But just in case, I needed to tell you some things. You saved my life when my parents died. You didn't have to take me in. You could have let social services find me a foster home, but you sacrificed everything, your retirement plans, your freedom, your peace to raise a traumatized kid. You worked overtime to pay for my school. You learned about science fair projects and coding, even though you'd never touched a computer in your life. You sat through every awards ceremony, every graduation, every pitch competition. You were my parent when I needed one most. I've tried to live a life that would make you proud. I hope I have. About the money. I know you don't need it or want it, so I'm asking you to do something else with it. Use it to help other kids like I was. Kids who lost their parents. Kids who have someone in their life willing to sacrifice for them, but who need a little help to reach their potential. I've set up a foundation. It's called the Sarah and Thomas Chen Foundation, named after my parents. I want it to give scholarships to first-generation college students studying STEM fields. I want it to help kids who are smart and hardworking but don't have resources. Kids like me. I'm putting you in charge of the foundation. I trust you to run it the way I would have wanted. Pick the scholarship recipients. Make sure the money goes to kids who need it. Help them the way you helped me. About Victoria. By the time you read this, enough time will have passed that you probably don't remember her. But just in case she ever shows up trying to claim she's owed something, I left you evidence. Everything is in my home office, in a folder labeled Victoria, Personal. I documented everything because I knew someone like her never really goes away. If she ever tries to take what isn't hers, you have what you need to stop her. I love you, Grandpa. Everything I am, everything I accomplished, started with you believing in me when I was 9 years old and lost. Thank you for giving me a life worth living. Your grandson, Marcus. I sat in Sarah's office, holding that letter, and cried for the first time since Marcus died. He'd known, even 5 years ago, he'd known Victoria might come back. He'd prepared everything. He'd protected me and his legacy and all the future kids who would benefit from his success. Robert, Sarah said softly, what do you want to do? I folded the letter carefully and put it back in my pocket. We establish the foundation. We start giving scholarships. We make sure Marcus's death meant something. The Sarah and Thomas Chen Foundation launched last December. We gave our first 10 scholarships this year, each one worth $50,000 over 4 years. 10 kids from working-class families. 10 kids who are the first in their families to go to college. 10 kids studying computer science and engineering at universities across the country. One of them, a young woman named Anna from Tacoma, wrote me a letter last month. Her father is a janitor. Her mother cleans houses. She wants to develop AI systems that help small businesses compete with corporations. She reminded me so much of Marcus at that age, brilliant, determined, grateful for the opportunity. I framed her letter and hung it in Marcus's old office, which is now the foundation's headquarters. Next to it, I hung the photo of Marcus at his college graduation, the one where he's holding his diploma and grinning at the camera. Every day, I go to that office and read applications from students who remind me of my grandson, kids who lost parents, kids being raised by grandparents or aunts or older siblings, kids who have someone in their life willing to sacrifice but who just need a little help to reach their potential. Marcus wanted his death to mean something. He wanted to prevent Victoria from victimizing anyone else. He wanted to help kids who needed the same break he'd gotten. He succeeded in all of it. Victoria is in federal prison in California, and she'll be there until she's in her 60s. Every other victim she scammed has been identified and is receiving restitution. The investigators who worked her case say the documentation Marcus left has become a model for how to properly document financial manipulation and fraud. And every year, the foundation will help more kids get the education they deserve. People ask me sometimes if 18 years was enough for what Victoria did, if justice was really served. I think about Marcus's letter, about his instructions, about the foundation helping its 10th student this year, and planning for 20 students next year. Victoria thought she was getting millions of dollars. Instead, she lost everything and gave us the gift of knowing exactly who she was. She thought Marcus was an easy target. She didn't realize he was 10 steps ahead of her, even after his death. Justice isn't just about punishment. It's about prevention. It's about taking something evil and transforming it into something good. Victoria wanted to steal Marcus's legacy. Instead, she helped us preserve it in a way that will help hundreds of kids over the coming decades. My grandson died too young. He never got to marry Lauren, never got to see his company reach its full potential, never got to meet his own children. But his legacy is alive in every scholarship recipient, every kid who gets a chance because of his foresight and generosity. And Victoria? She has 18 years in prison to think about the fact that the man she tried to exploit outsmarted her even from beyond the grave. She thought she was getting $23 million. Instead, she got a prison cell and a lifetime of debt. I visit Marcus's grave every Sunday after church. I tell him about the foundation, about the new students, about how his plan worked perfectly. I tell him that Victoria is in prison and will never hurt anyone else. I tell him that I'm proud of him, not just for his success, but for his character, his planning, his determination to protect people even after he was gone. And I thank him for trusting me with his legacy, for believing that an old factory worker could run a foundation and change lives, for giving me a purpose in my grief. The lawyer, Sarah, told me last week that we've received over 300 scholarship applications for next year. 300 kids who need what Marcus wanted to give them. We'll be able to fund 25 of them with this year's budget. 25 kids who will get the chance Marcus had. 25 kids who will never know they owe their education to a young man who died too soon but planned ahead enough to make sure his death mattered. That's Marcus's real legacy. Not the money, not the company, not even the fact that he stopped a con artist from hurting more people. His real legacy is those 25 kids, and the 25 more next year, and all the years after that. Victoria wanted to take everything. Instead, she gave us the motivation to make sure Marcus's story ended exactly the way he wanted it to, with hope, with justice, and with a future that helps people he'll never meet. I'm 72 years old now. I don't know how many more years I have to run this foundation, but I know that when my time comes, there will be systems in place to keep it going. Marcus planned for that too. There's an endowment, a board of directors, everything needed to ensure the foundation continues long after I'm gone. And somewhere in California, Victoria sits in a prison cell, knowing that the man she tried to exploit built something she can never touch, never destroy, never profit from. Knowing that her greed didn't just fail, it backfired in a way she never imagined. That's the thing about people like Victoria. They see successful people as targets, as sources of money to exploit. They don't understand that true success isn't about accumulating wealth. It's about building something that lasts, something that helps people, something that can't be stolen or destroyed by someone's greed. Marcus understood that, even at 38. Even as he was building his company and planning his future with Lauren, he understood that his real legacy wouldn't be his net worth. It would be what he did with it. And now, every time a scholarship recipient walks across a graduation stage with a computer science degree, every time one of them starts their own company, or develops new technology, or changes the world in some small way, that's Marcus living on. Victoria thought she could profit from Marcus's death. Instead, she ensured that his life's work would continue helping people for generations. I call that justice.